Hello everyone, in this video we're going to have a look at how rapid TPS works. I'm going to try to explain most of its systems. This is not a video on how to use Game Creator. This is a video on how this asset is constructed. So let's get started. So first off, we're going to start with UI elements. So we've got the player HUD, so let's get started with that one. So the player HUD is pretty straightforward in most cases. So we've got canvas group, we've got quest items, so compass, indicators, quest list UI, and we've got the ammo UI. So the ammo UI, let's turn on those gizmos. The ammo UI is basically directing these two. Then we've got a script making sure that when we equip a weapon, it disables and enables itself. Reason for that is because it's sometimes a bit glitchy and the values won't properly update, so that's why we're doing this. And we're making sure we save the HUD as a global variable in order to make sure that we can, for example, turn it off wherever we want. Like, that's one of the main reasons to do it. Now, I'm not going to explain the quest stuff too much because it's literally just basic quest elements. Same with health and stats in general. These are just typical attribute UI elements dictating everything. We've got the hotbar for gadgets, and the gadgets are just inventory items. So these are hotbar elements, and they're linked to our to our equipment system. So this is gadget 7. There we go. And this is the grenade. So yeah, pretty straightforward how this is set up. Nothing special going on here, to be honest. What is a bit different is the weapons. So I'm going to go into play mode to show you how this works. So this is a hotbar with an additional script, which basically allows you to rotate with the mouse between the items and equip whatever you have selected, and then press F on. Now, the way this works is, like I said, it is a hotbar. In that sense, it's really not that special, but it has an additional script on it, which is rotate game objects. This script basically allows you to rotate between the objects with the input you select here, so you can change it to something else. And you can select how many items you want, which index it starts on, so the active one, so that's 1. So this would have been 0, so this is 1, just to be clear. And then the timeout is how long it waits until it goes invisible again. And yeah, that's basically how it works. Other than that, these are just regular hotbar items. The reason F equips them is because that's set up here. So regular hotbar items with just a different script on the parent, changing the behavior and how you select them. So pretty cool stuff, but also pretty straightforward. And then everything else is just regular stuff, nothing too interesting. In case you want to know more about all the quest stuff, I would say have a look at the documentation for Game Creator Quest 2 or the example scenes, because it's pretty much just the default stuff. Then we've got camera preview, which is linked to the inventory prefab. I'm going to show you that in a bit as well. Basically, the only thing that is remotely interesting about this is that this camera shot basically shows a certain angle. So this is how it's set up, so you can change that. And then the conditions make sure that it's only turned on when required. The reason for that is, especially in URP, additional cameras just tanks performance real hard. So we want to make sure it's turned off unless it's required. And that's always when we're in a menu, so where the frame rate is less relevant. Inventory character is also pretty straightforward. This is a character that also has everything equipped on him. This is the one we display in the inventory menu. What is interesting here is making sure the background is solid color, and then basically alpha 0, and that we only show one layer. So transparent FX is the only one we're showing here. Then on here, on equip, we keep changing the layer. So one additional custom instruction, that's make sure that whenever we equip something on the player and on this character, we keep changing the all of the children of the character to the same layer that we're excluding from culling. And yeah, that's it. In terms of the camera, it's using an orthographic camera. Reason why I chose that is because with a perspective camera, when it gets really close, you have a bit of distortion, which is what I was trying to avoid. So hence the orthographic camera. Yeah, so that's the inventory character. And obviously what's important here is that it outputs itself, the camera, to a raw texture, which we then display in the inventory menu. Cool. Next one is canvas indicator awareness. This is just a default one with one change, is that the target is set to the factions. Going to discuss factions in a bit, but yeah, that's the only change. Other than that, it's just the regular default indicator awareness. And then we've got a canvas fade in. The reason I always add these, so basically canvas fade in is just it's a black canvas. That's how it works. And after 0.5 seconds, it will go from black to just transparent. It hides a lot of stuff that happens in the first 0.1 seconds when you start a scene. So some IK adjustments, animation adjustments, equipping of weapons, etc. So having that go from black to transparent in 0.5 seconds hides all of that stuff. So good reason to use that in your game as well. And then the last thing, of course, when it comes to UI is going to be the inventory. So basically the biggest menu of them all. So let's have a look at that one. So you can find that here under bag, equipment, TPS, and then here you have the bag skin. Open up the bag skin, and that's where you have the prefab. So let's have a look at that. I'm actually going to look at that in runtime, as it's a bit easier to discuss what's happening here, to be honest. So let's open it up. So going to pause now. Let's go into 2D view and then select it. So what we have here on the first page is pretty straightforward. So this is just our inventory stuff. So we've got the sections. So we've got the stats here on this side. These are just the regular stats. I just changed the look and feel a bit, but they're just regular attributes, health, stamina, etc., and the other stats, and just with some pictures. Again, this is just normal stuff. Just I try to make it look acceptable. And these are the lesser stats, of course, which are the other stats. Then in the middle, we've got the equipment section. So we've got the raw image, the one we just discussed from the inventory character. We've got our weapons here, and we've got our gear here. And the hotbar is basically all of our gadgets, which we also saw in the UI. So yeah, this is actually all pretty straightforward. Now, what is a slightly interesting is that I've got the menu pop up like in the middle over everything, as you can see here. And the way that works is there's a button on top of this, basically. That's the button filter. So it will filter the bag to whatever that item is. So weapons, secondary, reserve, gear, you know, etc. Well, you get the gist. And then it will set certain items to visible and non-visible, and that's pretty much how it works. So it's actually pretty straightforward. Just try to do inventory a bit different, make it look a bit nice without becoming too complex. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward stuff. Honestly, there's yeah. Anyway, so that's it for the inventory. Nothing too special going on here. I mean, I shouldn't say it like that because obviously it's awesome, but it's also not that different from what you might be used to. Now, this can be a bit different. So these are our skills, or whatever you want to call them, abilities, skills. Doesn't really matter. Now, the setup here, luckily, is quite simple. So it's using a custom script just for the UI element, and everything else is handled through inventory. So you basically link every item to a inventory item. So for example here, stamina, and it gets all the information, so name, icon, etc. from the inventory item, including what it should do. So on equip, increases stamina. On equip, it removes that same stamina. And it basically takes all of the rest of the information from the inventory item. So you don't really have to set up much here, and that's kind of the point. You just assign it. Then unlock conditions. So you need a skill point. As you can see, we have 7 here, and the requirement is that you have at least a skill point in order to unlock it, because this one costs just 1 skill point. And then once we unlock it, we're removing a skill point, so minus, and we're adding a skill point spent. Now the reason for that is because we've got this lovely button here, which is reset skills. Where is it? It's not here. There we go, reset skills. Once we press the reset skills button, what it does is it automatically resets all of these UI buttons, which is great. So no assignment, just it does everything. Then it sets the skill points back to the value. Basically, it's adding all of the skill points spent back to what you have left over, just to make sure that you have the correct amount of skill points. And it then sets skill points spent back to 0. So this allows you to basically reset skills. And yeah, that's pretty much how it works. So like I said, pretty straightforward. And yeah, I mean, other than that, you know, it's yeah, you have this window here. You see insert your screenshot here. I'm going to explain that as well. You unlock basically, and that's it. You can reset and everything empties out. So yeah, that's how it works. The way you set that extra image, because obviously we don't have that in inventory, is if we go to one of these items, you will see here the unlock cost plus the description image. So this is the empty one, so that's the insert your screenshot here. And then, you know, once you build out your game a bit, you're going to take pretty screenshots and basically put them in here of what these skills do. You can also just completely take it out. Obviously, it's just opening up a prefab. Where is it? There we go. Pop-up skills, and you can change that to whatever you want. Pop-up position dictates where it opens up, left or right, and yeah, that's pretty much how it works. Now, the important thing, obviously, is assigning a slot to it in your equipment. So hence the long list of skills. They're all the same skills, obviously, but you need to assign a slot to each and every single one of these. So this amount matches this amount. And that's it. I think inventory is perfect for skills. It just requires one little extra script for the UI part of it, for it to work the way I wanted it to work. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Other than that, quests is just straightforward stuff. Save and load, so save games, loading save games, and we've got our options. Now I think the options, especially this, is kind of cool. That's why we had that camera preview. So this is that preview shot, so you actually see the effect straight away of what you're applying to your scene. So I thought that was pretty cool. And of course we got all the visual effects as well. So yeah, I thought it was pretty awesome. And then press reset if you want to reset it to basics. And yeah, that's basically how the UI stuff works in this asset. Cool. So next up, we've got our cover mechanics. So we've got cover, of course. So, you know, we can be in cover, yay, which is what we want. And then we can vault as well, so we can, you know, jump over. We can get into cover and then lean, peek, and well, you know, it's yeah, basically how it all works. So cool stuff. So let's have a look at how it actually functions. So on the player, we've got a script. It's called cover controller. Now this might look slightly differently for you at this very moment if you're watching this video right now. This is a new editor script. You can get that from my Discord. It's in a package on it, but it will also be in the next update. It's just a visual change. It doesn't add any other value, just then being visually different. So this allows us to change input, so legacy new. Now this won't change the input system you're using, it's just changing your settings for your input system. So we've got legacy, new, and we've got both. So these are the controls. You can change them to whatever you want them to be. We've got the switch cover setting, so allowing you to switch. So it has a UI marker, a range setting we can select, a UI marker prefab, and then we store that in a global variable. So let's have a look at the player. So yeah, basically that marker is stored somewhere. Now there's a reason for that, is we've got a bunch of instructions, and in these instructions, once we start switching, we're doing all of this. So player is not controllable, so we can't change when we're doing in the run animation. We're going into a run animation. We're shaking the camera a bit. We're moving the player to that switch marker location. And then once we get there, so wait to arrive. So once we get there, we're resetting that animation state we set here of the running. We're stopping the camera burst. Player is controllable again. And if we're still holding C, we're going into cover again, because C is the cover button in our setup. And that's it. So if you want to change the controls, just do that here as well. Then early release instructions. So that's if you would let go during the switch. Obviously, it will then stop movement. It will stop the state we're in, stop the camera burst, and we can control the player again. So yeah, pretty straightforward stuff. Nothing interesting there. And that's the whole point. It's supposed to be really simple, straightforward. That was the aim. Then we've got the cover objects. Now I want to be clear. These green boxes are not the cover objects, right? So those are just basic meshes. The meshes are irrelevant. You can change this with anything else. The meshes don't actually do anything. Then, well, they stop bullets because they do have a collider, but in terms of cover functionality, they do absolutely nothing. These are the cover objects. Now you will see that they're quite thin as well, so they do have a certain thickness to them, and that's because basically this is where we lock the player in a position, so we can only walk left and right from this perspective, basically. There's a couple of settings. And let me also open up a high one just to explain those settings. So max cover distance, max cover height, fall distance, and easing. So the easing is literally as it says, the easing when you get into it. The fall distance, so that's basically this distance when you jump over it. Max cover height, so if it's higher than 1.5, it will automatically switch to the high cover locomotion state. If it's less than 1.5, it will be in the low cover animation state. So it's just for animations actually. Plus, in high cover you can't vault either, so that won't work. So yeah, just some mostly animation stuff. So again, pretty cool stuff. So we've got enter cover, so animation state, enter high cover, animation state. So these are just low animations, high animations in cover. Vaulting, if it's allowed, yes or no. For example, if this is the edge of your map and you have a low cover, you wouldn't want them to vault, so you can just turn it off. The vaulting animation, you can switch that to whatever you want. The UI elements, so those that's that C and V you see here. Obviously you can turn that off if you don't like it. I inspired that based on the Division. I thought it looks pretty cool, but you can either change that or just turn it off entirely. And then we added some extra instructions. There's nothing here, but this is basically where you have the luxury to set up the instructions you want when you enter and exit. Maybe you want some music to play whenever you enter a cover or whatever. Different camera effects, completely up to you. And yeah, these are those the UI elements. So as you can see, with high cover there's no vaulting, so you know, even if I press V, nothing's happening. That's because it's not allowed. And then with low, it's allowed. And yeah, that's pretty much how it works. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Pretty straightforward. Now I'll address this once we have a look at the gun setup. But basically, there's a peak option. Now this peak option works with edges, so there's an edge detector. The left-right is basically from the player's point of view, are you to the right or to the left of the object? And that's simply for the animation stuff with the sides, so make sure you set that correctly. And just place it where you think it looks right. So it all depends, of course, on the character you're using, the animations you're using, so there's no correct distance. You just have to see what has the best look and feel for you. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. And that's mostly it for the cover mechanics. I tried to make the setup as simple as possible. And again, quite important, these are the cover objects, not the meshes. So wanted to be clear about that. And yeah, that's basically it for the cover setup. Now, one last thing is obviously the enemies have cover as well. Just make sure that isPlayer is turned off on NPCs. So not just enemies, but any type of NPC. It's not the player. Just to make sure input is not getting messy, and the UI elements won't display everywhere. But yeah, that's it. Next up, we've got the AI class. So the way the class works is you have a archetype. So assault, rusher, tank, sniper, blah, blah, blah. And we've got a faction. Now these have completely different types of functionality. So archetype is basically a little script here. So you can select the one you want. So if I look at main, whenever I select an archetype for the player, so I selected main, this is what happens on start of the scene. So it will set the ammunition values here. For these enemies, so these are different classes of enemies, it will change their stats, for example, or they will have different stats, different enemies, weapons equipped, yeah, things like that basically. So those are basically scriptable objects that run on start. And by setting it up like this, you can make it work, pretty easily when you start a scene and add it to your character. Now, factions is really different. It's actually incredibly simple, but incredibly useful. So often with Game Creator, you can select a character, for example, in a condition, in an instruction. Now, what if you want this to apply to a group? And that's basically what factions are. So easy example, and we'll have a look in a bit at the behavior tree as well. But easiest example is actually with our camera preview, with our indicator awareness. Sorry, in the target, instead of having it being a fixed character like the player, it will work on the faction. So you go characters, find by faction, and then you select player and friendly, and that's it. So that's kind of the goal. Instead of targeting just one object, you target a group to which multiple characters can be a part of. And it will be clear in behavior mostly, because that's where it's mostly used. But yeah, basically you've often found yourself, whenever you create a system like this, you're like, oh, it should target both the friendly NPC and the player. How do you do that? Well, that's what factions comes in for. So a really simple integrated solution for that. And the way you set up your factions is like I showed you. So every character will have a faction, and you just assign the one you want. And then when you go into play mode, you can make sure that they're actually properly assigned by opening up the factions game object, clicking on it, and seeing these all belong to enemy group 1, and right now only the player belongs to the player group. We don't have anyone friendly. But for example, if I would open up my inventory, so I've got my inventory, if I drop in the turret, you'll see that the turret is getting added to that faction group, so that whenever the enemies are going to attack, they'll attack both of these. And that's pretty much how it works. So really simple setup, but quite essential, basically adding these groups, because otherwise it becomes quite difficult often in the setup to make sure that you can actually target and attack multiple characters at the same time. Next up, let's have a look at our enemies. We're mainly going to have a look at the behavior scripts, but I wanted to touch on a couple of things. So first of all, we do have an AI class per enemy as well, so that sets some of the unstart instructions for them. We've got their faction here, and we've got an awareness script. Now the awareness script is actually incredibly simple in setup. So what it does is, once the awareness for this character from perception reaches the value of 1, it will then alert everyone in a 10-meter radius, which means it will set their perception to 1 as well. You can increase this, decrease this, make it 20. Keep in mind, this is not about realism, it's a video game. Yes, at a distance of 20 meters or 10 meters, 20, let's say 20, you should be able to hear gunshots. Doesn't make it fun for a game. A lot less, because when you look at this, so basically if I shoot here, everyone here would be aware. Not really that fun in a game, but that's up to you. Do whatever you want. Just sharing my views. But that's basically all it does. The reason I created this is because there is a instruction for Game Creator by default in Perception to do this, but it requires hard references to other characters, which I don't really like. I want it to be dynamic, so that's what the awareness script does. So yeah, pretty straightforward. Other than that, the only other interesting thing here, because these are all pretty straightforward things, again, this is the faction system, so they start by tracking players and friendlies. Pretty cool stuff. The only other thing that is remotely interesting here, or different, let's say it like that, is obviously going to be their behavior. I already touched upon their controller, so it's pretty much exactly the same. There's just no player, no input, and then that's it. That's kind of the point, right? But at least this allows them to use cover, which is quite important in our behavior as well. So this is their behavior tree. It looks quite complex. It's actually incredibly simple in terms of behavior trees. The way behavior trees works is that everything goes in a matter of priority. So this is a selector. A selector goes in order of priority. So 1 is first, 2 is second, 3 and 4. Now you want this to run at the beginning, this take over, then this takes over, and takes over. The way you set that is with conditions. I'm sorry it's a bit laggy. In the latest versions of Unity, behavior is a bit laggy, so ignore that. So this will trigger basically if the bool of awareness is set to false, and if we can't see a player or friendly person from a faction. And then it just basically does some idles. So depending on what we set here on our character, so idle, talk. So if this is talk, then it will do random talking animations. This is a custom instruction as well, playing random animations. If it would have been set to solo, so basically if he's standing by himself, he does different type of random animations. And if it's set to walk, he'll walk. I mean, that's pretty obvious. Now, if this gets overwritten by this one, because they became alert of someone in this faction, they will stop the random gestures, slightly different instruction than the normal stop gestures. They will then instantiate a marker on the player, which is the player location. They saw him at that point, and then walk over there. So this gives the player the time to move away, because they will go to that point when they got alerted. Which, yeah, gives you time to hide. If you didn't hide, they'll see you, and that's the next step. So the next step is they're not alerted anymore. They're fully aware of your existence, which is when they will then share with their fellow teammates as well. Hey, I saw him, which is the awareness script here. The bool of aware is still false. And basically what we're doing here is our combat preparedness steps. So depending on the archetype, so rusher, tank, assault, etc., we'll have different setups. So basically just them equipping their weapons. That's pretty much what it comes down to. They're just equipping different weapons based on the type they are. And then at the end, it will set aware the bool to true. So it's set to true. So this is no longer met. And then we're going to the actual combat stage. So everyone's aware now, everyone's prepared, everyone has their weapons. And now they're aware and they can see our player. They're aware of our player. So then a rusher is going to be randomly selecting between these two attacks, so skill 1 and skill 2, while maintaining a distance in following us. The tank is going to not go into cover, it's just going to aim at us, follow us, and keep shooting. So kind of like in the Division, you got those big guys, which are tanks, they just walk towards you and keep shooting. We've got our sniper, assault, and controller. If they're not in cover, they're going to move into the best cover. So this custom instruction allowing them to get into cover. If they are not in cover but they're really close to the player, they'll kick the player, kind of like a melee attack, in order to make sure that they do something when you get too close. And if they got into cover, depending on who they are, they'll do certain things. So this is a random selector. Now, the important thing to keep in mind is it's a video game, right? So it needs to remain entertaining. If they constantly stay shooting at you and would just reload on the spot and keep shooting at you, you couldn't do anything. So we can't have that. So at times, they'll randomly select a wait, so where they just wait, giving you the opportunity to do something as a player. Sometimes they'll aim and shoot for a bit and then go back into cover. Sometimes they'll blind fire because it's cool, that's why. Sometimes they'll if you're too close, they'll exit cover and then find new cover. Basically how it works. And if they are controllers, so controller archetype is the one that basically uses gadgets as well. So if they are controllers, they will then from occasionally pop a turret which I'll explain in a bit because that's pretty much next. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the behavior tree. So like I said, it looks like a lot when you first open it up, and then you realize it actually couldn't be much easier than this. It's incredibly simple. So yeah, that's it for the enemy characters. Everything else they do is, well, pretty much everything is dictated by their behavior. Some of it is dictated by their archetype. Again, you can find those archetype here. So assault, controller, etc. Next up, let's have a look at gadgets in general. So we're going to go TPS, and then we're going to go TPS, where is weapons? Shooter, there we go. So let's have a look at the turret first. So the gadget turret, which is basically this one, we've got a pretty straightforward setup, to be honest. So the gadget is set up as a game creator character. This is done for several reasons. One, we can do this. We can add everything we normally do with characters, which is pretty awesome. And then it also has a behavior, which is kind of important. So the behavior here basically controls the what the turret does, and it doesn't do much. So if it has no health, it will explode, kind of what you hope would happen. On start, if prep isn't done, it will equip the turret, and then when prep is done, it's going to well, depending on the faction. So if it sees people within the faction of these enemy groups, if the distance is too big, it's going to stop shooting. If the distance is closer than that, it's going to shoot. And that's it. That's literally what it does. So it's literally just going to start shooting. So pretty straightforward. The enemy turret is pretty similar. The only thing, of course, that is different is not much really. It's just that it targets a different group, so it doesn't target the player and the friendlies. It targets the it does target the player and the friendlies instead of the enemies. So yeah, that's pretty much it. The drone is actually pretty much identical. The only thing that's really different, which I'll highlight, is the additional script here. I just realized this should have this one. It's other is empty, so it doesn't really matter at the moment, but it just looks cleaner. What's different about the drone is the one additional script. So everything else is the same. It's also a character. It uses a turret as well, but it basically flies. So this is where you can change. So maintain distance from terrain 2.5, terrain layer, you set that up what you want, and basically because game creator characters don't normally fly, it will then fly. I mean, that's pretty much how it works. So this plane needs to be set to default as well, so no, this object only, and then yeah, it's going to be flying above that. So if I go into play mode, for example, let's have a look. Let's open our inventory. So we've got a drone, we've got a turret. So if I open up my drone, it's going to be following me while maintaining, well, it's engaging in combat already, but you kind of get the point, right? So it's going to be flying and following me unless it sees an enemy, and then it will go to the enemy, kind of like you saw happen just now. But yeah, this basic script basically allows game creator characters to fly at a fixed distance, and that's all it does. That's literally all it does. It's just allowing it to fly, and that's basically how it works in the Division as well. So they fly at fixed heights, and then when I say fixed, I mean from the terrain. So if the terrain goes up, it will keep going up with that terrain. So yeah, pretty cool. And that's basically how the gadgets work. Now there are obviously some interesting things going on when it comes to equipping those gadgets. So if we have a look at the turret here, so pretty straightforward equipment setup, but when we have a look at the conditions, we'll find there's some nice little twists here. So if we are in a low cover, it's going to instantiate the turret a bit higher and at a certain distance. So it basically, the player places the turret on top of the cover, which is pretty cool. If we're in high cover, we're not placing anything and it will reset the turret cooldown of the inventory item, basically meaning you can't place it there. That's what it comes down to. And if we're not in cover, it's just going to place it on the ground, just like I did in the beginning. So yeah, some nice conditional things based on what we're doing. So really Division-esque, which was the goal. So yeah, that's actually pretty cool. And that pretty much covers the gadgets. Now the cool thing is the controller, which I think in my setup is this guy, the green one, isn't it? Yeah, that's him. He will use gadgets as well, which is a turret, so he'll place a turret as well. But that's the hostile turret, so slightly different tree, slightly, it's pretty much the same, but slightly different. So yeah, pretty cool stuff there. And then the last thing I want to look at is the rest of the weapons. There isn't much interesting going on. Most of it is just default shooter module, but we're doing some interesting things with the sight. So I want to have a look at that. So let's have a look at the weapons. So TPS, and then we go to shooter. And this is basically where we have our weapons. So I'll take the pistol because honestly it doesn't really matter that much which one you take. Most of it is going to be really similar. So if we take pistol, for example, most of this is going to be well, the same as what you're used to regularly with the shooter module. I'll be fair, it's not the easiest setup, definitely takes a bit of getting used to, but weapons just have a lot of settings. So it's good that it's all here. It can just appear a bit overwhelming at first, but I'd say look at the documentation for the shooter module, look at the demos, look at this basically, because once you realize it, a lot of this just makes a lot of sense. They're just settings you'll see in a lot of shooter games. So seems a bit overwhelming, but it all makes sense. What is slightly different is, one, we've got a player hit reaction from like the melee module, so they'll actually have a hit reaction when you shoot them. Also, we have all of our sights. Now the sights is definitely a bit less ordinary. So let's have a look. So when it comes to sights, so we've got the regular aim, we're changing the field of view. Now the reason we have a different aim for the enemy, everything is identical, but we don't change field of view. There's a reason for that. You don't want the field of view to change whenever the enemy starts aiming. You only want that to happen when you aim. Hence there being different weapons and different sights. Then we've got blind fire. We're not changing field of view here, so no reason to have multiple. And the important thing with the animation is basically just that we have a blind fire animation. So yeah, cool stuff. We're in cover and we're basically shooting. That's it. Cool. Then we've got the cover. So basically when we stand in cover, same with here, enemy version just doesn't have the change of field of view. And then we've got the peaks. So that's whenever we're peeking basically on the side. Now I'm going to show you how this works as well in the setup, because obviously that's pretty much all there is to it. Everything else is pretty conventional. Whenever we aim, so releasing the aim just goes back to default. But when we aim, we've got a bunch of conditions that checks our situation. We're not in cover, it's using this sight. We are in cover, but it's also a high cover and we're at the edge, it's going to use peeking. If all of that is the same, but it's the left edge, we're using peeking on the other way, the left peeking. If we are in cover and it's not high cover, we're using this aim. And that's basically it. So it's a lot of conditions, but it's basically just checking for the different cover situations because we want different animations. So yeah, it's just basically to make it look pretty. And that's pretty much that. Now the same goes for shooting. So if we have a look at the prefab of the pistol, we've got the fire instructions here. So when we press, it's going to pull fire, and basically we've got a bunch of conditions, and yeah, that's basically how it works. So if we're not in cover, it's going to shoot. If we are in cover, it's going to shoot as well, as long as we're aiming. If we're in cover and we're not in aim and we're not in high cover, it's going to change the sight to blind fire first, so that we're blind fire shooting. So yeah, that's pretty much the setup. Again, this is all just cover related because we need different conditions, and this is just a regular reload. Now that's also the reason why we have different ones for the enemy, because the enemy obviously doesn't have that trigger, because you don't want the enemy to be doing that for you. So hence two different pistols. It's using a different prefab, and it's using different sights. So this is using some of the enemy sights. Now we're not really peeking as the enemy, so that's why they're just the regular ones. Now one of the things that's also different, and I got asked about this on my Discord, is layers. So I can't set up layers for you as the asset, because otherwise it will overwrite whatever you currently have in those layers. Now I don't ever want to do that, but it does mean that currently when you install this, enemies can hit each other. So what you want to do is create a new layer. So I created enemy, so just add a layer and name it whatever you want. And then I selected this whole group. I think it's actually better to name them per group, right? So we've got factions, so enemy group 1, 2, 3, 4. So ideally you do the same. And then you want to make sure that they're all on that layer. And then when you select the weapon they're using, this one for example, you don't include that layer. So the layer mask excludes the layer enemy, and that way they can't shoot each other. And that's pretty much it. Now you need to make sure, of course, that the player does have that layer included, because otherwise you can't shoot them either. And that's it. If you change the layer for your player to something else, make sure the enemy does have that layer as well. Same goes for your turret. If you don't want the turret to be able to shoot the player, again, same story, right? Just include disclude that layer in the layer mask. And that's pretty much it for the weapons. I mean, everything else, most of them are just, we've got different weapons, of course, but the setup is all going to be pretty much the same. So not much else to that. So first of all, I wanted to highlight the context menu again, just in case you missed that. We've got a context menu, rapid template, and this is how you add stuff. It's actually really straightforward. A lot of different things, and just add them like this to your scene. So if I want another ammo box, for example, just add another ammo box. If I want another cover object, rapid template, cover, there we go. I can just place it here, and then adjust the size of this just so it connects to this one, and automatically I'll be able to basically go over, and I can actually show you that. Need to make sure I connect them properly. That's a bit too much. It's not enough. Okay. I think it should be, yeah, okay. Let's have a look. Cool. We go into cover, and as you can see, it just continues to cover. Now, obviously, do it nicer than I did. Make sure they're properly aligned, but you get the gist. You don't even have to align the entire object, because again, the mesh is irrelevant, right? It's just about the objects. Make sure they're all one. Or you can even remove the other ones. You get the point. So, but that's how easy it is to connect them, and you'll stay into cover. So it's really straightforward system. Now, I did notice this as well, by the way. That's because if we don't have a weapon equipped, we'll just be in a default locomotion, which doesn't have a height setting. So one of the things you might want to add if you, whenever we look at, let's have a look at the locomotions. Let's quickly address this. So animations, so basic locomotion. I think that's this one. So in the other locomotions, we're basically setting the properties here. So crouch, speed, and height. Same with like the cover. We're addressing that. Now, we're not doing that with the default. We are doing that when a weapon is equipped. So when we go into cover, it's changing the height to 1.3, I think. Whenever we get out, if we don't have a weapon equipped, it will just go into maybe this one, whatever. No, it's most likely just a basic, and it won't have that height because I don't think we have anything set up by default. So what you can do is just assign a basic one here. So for example, if I do that now, so in basic I did set the height correctly to 1.8, I think. There we go. Oops, there we go. So now if I go into cover and get out, the height will be correct. So yeah, that's just wanted to address that quickly. Cool. Yeah, that's basically how that works. And then lastly, let's quickly address Destructibles. They're simple, that's the point. So the way Destructibles work, they are set up to have their own traits. So it's a really simple class with health. Now health by default is calculated using your max health, your level, and level is using experience, hence all of these stats being visible. Just wanted to explain that. And the way the Destructible script works, once the health reaches 0, these instructions are going to be playing. So it will destroy the full bottle, which is this one, and it will then turn on the broken bottle, which is this one. And this one is just a lot of different pieces, basically glass pieces, and it's going to collapse because all of them have their own rigid body. So that's how the Destructible script works, which is pretty cool. So yeah, it's going to turn off the beer, so it's going to turn off the beer itself, and it's going to destroy the bottle, and it's going to turn on the fractured one, but it's also going to destroy the liquid inside, which is this beer, which is just a liquid, and the cap is not going to be kinematic anymore. So last thing it does is it also cleans up. So the thing is, if you have a lot of Destructibles, which is always really cool in the game, a lot of rigid bodies can have a big impact on your performance, or also can just be messy and create a lot of issues. So after 10 seconds it will clean up, and then after another 10 seconds the pieces will be completely gone. So I'm going to demonstrate this. Let's turn off all the enemies so they're not getting in the way here. There we go. So we'll go into play mode. I'm going to demonstrate my marvelous aim, which is really bad. There we go. That was decent. So then we have all the loose pieces, and then after, there we go, and it starts shrinking. You can have to be that, you know, take more time, be quicker, etc. But yeah, basically it will clean up the mess for you after X amount of time. Nice stuff. Like I said, you know, the cover extends. So this one, for example, I can't vault here. So if I press V, I can't vault. That's because in this object, when we have a look at the low cover, we're also using somewhere, don't know where, here we are. Let's see if I can find it. There we go. In the cover settings, in vaulting is turned off. So even though we're using a low cover, I don't want to vault through the car because that would be weird, so I just turned it off. So the UI element will automatically disappear as well. Yeah, and all you do to connect them is literally make sure the triggers align nicely, and that's it. So pretty cool setup. I hope this helped you. It definitely explained most of what the template does. Obviously, you know, you'll need to still know some of the basics of Game Creator, but it's pretty easy to learn through this. Yeah, I hope this video helped you. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.